Hi everyone, welcome to my second episode of Chitchat with Kitcat. Firstly, I'd like to apologise for the long delay since I released the first episode. I'd had a stinking cold and actually life's just incredibly busy, which I know I said probably about 20 times in my first episode, but it really is busy. It's full on, especially when you're unwell, because I don't know about you, but this time of year I'm always getting unwell. But that's not the main topic of this episode. This episode is it's going to be quite a difficult one. I had a lot of suggestions from people to touch upon more raw topics, go a bit deeper with these episodes, deeper with myself as well, and all sorts of different things. So I thought, do you know what? I owe it to you, myself, and just anyone and anything really to just to open up that little bit more. So I'm going to do that on this episode today. This episode of Chit Chat with Kitcat is going to be all about my journey with grief, my journey with healing, having lost such a huge part of my life from a really young age. I can feel myself welling up, and I really don't want this to be a therapy session of where I've just talked to myself, because I do want this to help people. I want this to help anyone who is currently dealing with some kind of loss in their life, whether it be from a person or an experience, or they're just feeling some sort of loss somewhere in their life. I want this to be able to help and to resonate with you, as I feel like although this is probably going to be a little bit hard for me, I feel like this could be quite cathartic as well and really help. So that's what this episode is about. And also I really thought that I owed it to you that, well, now that I've hit 20k, and that is something I will never take for granted or take with a pinch of salt ever, that I've hit 20,000 of you now follow me on Instagram, which is absolutely wild. I don't understand how we're here, how we got here. But I just felt like, because a lot of the content I post over on my main account is to do with, it's fun, it's comedy. I'm being a bit of a dickhead, really. And whilst, I'm, not going to be big-headed, I enjoy it. It's something that maybe I'm a little bit good at, or whatever, or something that I enjoy to do. But there is also another side of me that I don't really, I share where I can, especially when it comes to mental health. But there is also a huge part of my life that I don't feel like I owe it to share with anyone, but I think it would help you gain an insight to who I am as well. Not just the face that I put on these house review videos. There is a lot more depth to me. I'm quite an in-depth person, and I would say in a positive way, quite a complex person as well. So that's everything that this episode is going to be about. My journey with grief, where I'm at with it. It's a lifelong journey, but I think it's really, really important to talk about. Ideally, would have liked to have posted this last month during Mental Health Month, but life's busy, So I really want to sort of get that across, the real me, really. So to touch upon my experience with grief, like I mentioned at the start, I don't want this to come across like a therapy session, because I know it's really easy, especially with podcasts nowadays, where it's just really easy to just sort of word vomit, and it just obviously being a massive relief, because if you're anything like me, just talking and just getting out of your head is 50% of like I'm 50% of the way getting better if I just talk. So I just don't want it to be like a massive word vomit dump of just stuff that I don't really need to share. So to touch upon it lightly, my experience with grief, I don't want to get sad. I lost my mum when I was 19, and she was quite unwell from when I was the age of 15. So I had to grow up very quickly. And I had to understand life, and probably had to take life quite seriously for a good couple of years until we sadly lost her. She was unwell with the dreaded C word. It's quite triggering for me to say that word, which isn't helpful, but it is. She was unwell with that for quite a few years. And yeah, I lost her when I was 19 years old. I am now 26. And to not be pessimistic, I obviously have dealt with it incredibly well. I'm not going to shit on myself and say that I haven't, because I really have. And I am, despite what my head tries to tell me a lot of the time, I am incredibly proud of myself being here now and everything that I've done. But what I was trying to say is that I'm now 26, and I feel like, not that I'm not where I want to be when it comes to having lost her, or having lost such a massive part of my life, but I do feel like it is still just as hard, if not harder, because I've gone through some of the biggest moments of my life where I haven't been able to have that support, have that space to like lean on someone. And my mum was my best friend. I lent on her for absolutely everything, reassurance, advice, everything. And there's a lot of knock-on effects with that, and it's just having a massive void in your life that you just can't fill. I do believe it is my responsibility and our responsibility when we have lost someone so big in our life to lean on people and ask for help, especially in times of overwhelm. But that's 100% been my biggest issue, especially when I'm overwhelmed. I don't know about you, but I really struggle to ask for help. I really struggle to reach out and do the things that I know will help me, but I just don't, for whatever reason, whether I think I'm a burden or I don't know, this isn't a good thing, but I feel like everybody has their own shit and everyone has a lot on their plate. And I feel where I class myself as quite a complex person after losing someone, I feel like it taints my judgment on a lot of things, and I feel like no one really needs that in their life. Like, it's an extra added stress. They don't need my stress. But what I mean about how I feel like it taints my judgment by having lost someone so big in your life and someone who you turn to for reassurance and help, when you have to go through a lot on your own, you start to question a lot of things like, is this what my mum would do? Would she say this? Because I don't know, I took on a lot of advice from her and reassurance. Like, I grew up with her. She was my best friend, and to have that gone, it makes me very complicated. I feel very complicated a lot of the time. I feel like it heightens a lot of emotions. It's very complex. But I don't like to have that as an excuse throughout my life. That's might be being a bit hard on myself when I say that, but I don't like to use, I'm going through a hard time, it's because I lost my mum. And it's like, I hate that. I hate having that. It's not an excuse, but I do feel like it really impacts a lot of areas in life, and I think it's really important to admit that. As they say, grief is the price we pay for love. It's something that you have to deal with for the rest of your life. As horrible as that is, it is going to be with you for life, and I think that's really hard to accept. But I also think it's an opportunity to have that strength in a lot of areas in life. Oh my goodness, the strength that it gives you is next to none. And I don't know how I've got through some of my days. I really don't. And it will be the randomest of things that will set things off in my mind. And yeah, it's a lot. And also, when it comes to grief and having such a massive part of your life no longer there with you, I think with that comes with a lot of loneliness. I think subconscious loneliness as well. Like, obviously, conventionally, we don't have that person in our lives anymore, so physically they're not there, but I think subconsciously as well, just knowing that person's there and they're not anymore, I think as well is quite loud, if that makes sense. I mean, it's certainly quite loud in my head because I feel like I only have my own thoughts 24 hours a day, and I struggle to be vulnerable with anyone else because, being completely honest, I only ever did that with my mum, so to not have that anymore is really hard. But I do feel like, again, an opportunity to grow, and it's an opportunity to better understand yourself and to really, really have to lean on yourself. But I do feel like I need to ask for help in some instances as well, which I think we all can do a bit more, is to ask for help and just to be a bit more like, yeah, I'm just going through a bit of a hard time, and not have to mask a lot when you're going through a lot, especially when it comes to grief, because it's taboo. Nobody likes to talk about it. No one likes to talk about having lost someone in your life. People go, "Oh, tricky conversation, let's diverge." And I am the person that goes, "No, this is tricky, this is sticky, let's talk about it," because it is, for me anyway, such a relief to just talk about it. So that was a long way of getting around that. Yeah, it can feel incredibly lonely. It can feel incredibly isolating, because sometimes when you're in the depths of grief and you're really feeling the funk, you don't want to talk to anyone because, I don't know, my fear is that you're not going to understand. Or, I mean, we're like, 13 minutes into this podcast, and oh my God, what was that? Oh, it was someone coming into the block of flats. My biggest fear is that from this episode is that it's just been a load of word vomit. But I'm really, really hoping that this resonates with someone, as I said at the start, like, who has gone through a massive loss in their life, or has also lost someone really significant to them. Yeah, and as well, I think when it comes to grief, I think we all have an idea of a way of how we're supposed to grieve. And I don't know if you can resonate with this at all, if you two are experiencing this. I have a lot of guilt with how I feel like I go about my life and how I grieve, because I'd say I don't grieve, and this may not make much sense, but I feel like I don't grieve in a very conventional way, or how you would expect someone to grieve. Like, when I think of grief and losing someone, like when I lost my mum, I said to myself, I will lock myself in my room probably for about 2 weeks. I won't come out and I won't speak to anyone. But actually, I actually set up a charity for my mum called Carolyn's Cause. Cue the sadness. In aid of beating bowel cancer, and that was one of the first things I did when I lost her, because I didn't have that strength before, but it just gave me that strength to just, yeah, let's turn something really shit into something really good. So actually, the conventional way I expected to grieve wasn't the whole feeling sad, feeling really depressed really quickly. Obviously those feelings come and go, but I went for it. I set up a charity. I raised like £8,000 or so from doing lots of challenges, and I just really threw myself into the deep end in a lot of things. But when I also think about grieving in a conventional way, it's crying on anniversaries, and it's crying on their birthdays, and it's crying on milestones because they're not there with you. And whilst obviously I sometimes do those things, I don't feel like I grieve in that way. Like there is some sort of guilt where I feel like I'm not sad enough. I'm not sad enough that the person's not here anymore. And I do think guilt is a massive part of it. Like any significant thing I feel that comes into my life, like I'm happy, but I'm not as happy as I should be, or I don't allow myself to feel as happy and in the moment as I should be, because I believe subconsciously I don't deserve to be this happy because my mum isn't here anymore. Like, she's not here to see this, so I can't be happy. It doesn't make sense. So when it comes to, just grieving in general, I don't do it in a conventional way, which is probably quite hard on myself and not that kind to say, I suppose, because there is really no right or wrong way to do that. But honestly, this podcast episode is going to be, this is so raw, this is so all over the place. I really feel like I've just said like tiny amounts, and I feel like none of the points I've made has linked. So if anything, if you've got this far and you think, what is going on, that is grief, that is healing. That sounds really cheesy, but nothing makes sense. It goes like this. So, and that is what my podcasts are doing, but I hope it resonates with you, and I hope you're following in some sort of way. But my next point is coping. It's coping with it in day-to-day life when everything feels really heavy, when everything feels like it's too much. I don't know if you can resonate in some way, but again, not using loss as an excuse, but as I've got older, I've certainly found my mind gets louder, not necessarily relating to grief, but I do believe it is a knock-on effect of it because of having such trauma and just having such a significant thing happen at such a young age. I do feel like as I'm getting older, my mind is getting louder, whether that be coming from a place of perfectionism. I've been through so much. My life can't be anything other than perfect. I have to know 100% every area of my life is correct. I need to obsessions. I don't know. Like, I feel like there is a increased need for certainty, to know everything, to know how everything's going to go, because I don't know, I feel like it's really made me struggle with uncertainty and things having to feel comfy 100%, and with that it's a lot. But that is one of the main ways of coping. I don't know if that's really a coping strategy. It seems pretty the opposite. Needing to know uncertainty, needing to be able to understand everything, that in itself is probably a word for that, but it's not really coming into my head right now. But I see that as a way of coping, of needing to know everything all of the time. And also, as it's probably very clear, I love to use humour to cover up dark times, emotions. But also, I don't want that to be, oh, that's just because I lost my mum, I'm suddenly really funny. Well, that sounds really shit and big-headed. I didn't mean that. Just because I've lost my mum, that's why I like to be fun and create shit videos like that. I hate the idea of using it as an excuse or a reason, but I do think that it has given me the mentality of probably, well, something that I got from my mum so obviously, but I love to just have a laugh. And when things get really shit and things feel really shit, I just think, God, I just need to laugh. I need to do something. I need to just make other people laugh. I do think it's just a great way of just getting out of your head, and laughter is just the best medicine ever. And it can just really get yourself out of the past or the future, and it can just really just get you out of a funk and just laugh and have fun. And that for me is so important. That has been, it's so important, but also I do think it's so easier said than done when you're going through that and you're under a really dark cloud and you want to try and be lighthearted. And sometimes it is so okay to just be like, nah, not in the mood. I really don't give a shit about this right now. I just want to sit and wallow and cry. And I think that is also really important, because I feel like that's your body screaming for rest, and do that. Absolutely do that. But I think only temporarily, because it can be so easy to slip into a funk if we just slump for too long. So I think it's important to allow yourself to feel all the feels and to cry. Crying is like, this sounds really fucked up actually. Crying is actually one of my favourite things to do. That sounds really bad, but it is. I love to cry. I love to turn on my speaker and listen to the saddest music, be in the bath and just cry and sob. But anyway, this links back to as well coping and the guilt. Like, I feel like this is as well sounds pretty fucked up, but you might be able to resonate with me on some sort of level with this. I feel guilty if I'm not crying all the time. I feel guilty if I'm not in a funk and depressed. I feel comfort when I'm depressed. I am in therapy. I am. Probably need more of it. But anyway, this is what I mean. You gotta fucking laugh or you'll cry. But I feel really guilty if I'm not depressed, if I haven't got some sort of mental health issue going on. I do feel like I should be feeling like this. I've lost my mum. How could I ever live a life that's happy and no problems with having lost my absolute everything? It makes no sense. But I know that's also really unkind and incredibly limiting. So that's not helpful. So I do everything that I can to rewire my brain when it comes to having lost someone so big in my life. And I actually had a really good conversation about this with my aunt, actually, a couple of weeks ago. Not so related to grief, but grief is a secondary, I feel, in every trouble that goes on after losing someone. I do feel like it is connected with everything in some way, not to use it as an excuse, but it is relevant. We spoke about how important it is to rewire your brain, and I do feel like there's a book on this. I feel like her name's Dr. Julie something. Please let me know if you know it, because it is a book I'm wanting to read. But yeah, about rewiring your brain, and actually the default, and for me, I do believe this is because of what's happened in my life. My default is to just go to the negatives. Like, some of my closest people in my life really struggle to understand that when I tell them I'm a very negative person, they really struggle to understand that. They're like, Rachel, I think you're being way too hard on yourself. Like, how can you be a negative person? You're literally one of the most positive people I met. And that is not me trying to boost my ego or anything like that. You know, they say you're one of the most positive people I know. Like, how could you say that you're so negative? But in all honesty, I am so naturally, by default, so negative. Worst case scenario, how can this go wrong? What if this happens? Is this right? Is this wrong? What am I meant to be doing? Like, I find it really hard to twist it, to literally flip everything on its head. Like, it's so easy to do that as well, which I think is terrifying in times. Like, it's just too easy to be negative. So, well, for me anyway. So that is something I'm trying really hard on at the moment. That is something quite current that I'm personally feel like I'm going through right now, whether it has been triggered by grief and having lost someone and just thinking fucking hell, everything's shit. But it's just come to my mind now, like, since I've moved into this flat, like, I can't go on in life having such a negative fucking outlook on everything all of the time. Like, I am so blessed. I am so blessed with where I'm at in my life. And I have to remind myself of that. I have to schedule time in the day to actually reflect on where the fuck I am right now and be like, this is so positive. This is so good. What you've got going in your life right now, you've got everything. You've got family. You've got friends. You've got a roof over your head. You're able to afford bills, heating, eating. I've got everything. Like, I'm so blessed and grateful. But what I find is so hard and sad, and I think this is really important to share, I am so negative, and also I'm really low a lot of the time. I think that's really important to share, because we have this external pressure of, oh my God, how the hell can you be sad? You've got all this going on in your life. You can't possibly be sad. What have you got to be sad about? Or my worst thing is when people tell you, well, there's someone else who's got it worse than you. And I think, I don't know, I just really don't like that way of looking at things. Like, obviously, sure, you can say that, but I feel like that really invalidates how you're feeling, and it then comes again guilt. Okay, I shouldn't be feeling this way. But I think it's really important to be like, you can feel this way, and it's okay to feel this way, but you've got to be putting the effort in order to try and see different results. Try and be positive. Rewiring your brain, so important to do. Like, when shit feels really heavy, go back to the basics, day by day, minute by minute if you have to. Like, really taking it back to basics, and just ensure that you are looking after yourself in the best way possible, because I feel like you can't really do the things you want to do or whatever if you're not doing the basics of looking after yourself, nurturing yourself, being there for yourself. Which kind of nicely, I think this is the first time in this episode where something's actually linked together quite nicely. This brings me on to the holistic side when it comes to mental health, coping with loss, coping in life in general. I don't know if I haven't mentioned it a lot recently on my socials, but I'm really into holistic health and well-being, naturopathy. I haven't been giving it enough attention in my life right now because my life's just felt too chaotic and busy, which is something I'm desperately working on. But it is something that brings me a lot of peace to be able to understand our bodies, how it works, how grief, like one of the biggest things when it comes to grief as well, I can't remember, I'm going to be wrong on this because I haven't been paying enough attention to it in my life. The grief in regards to our body is linked to our lungs, which in turn can come out in colds, coughs, when you're feeling like heavy grief and things like that. Honestly, it's like lights go off my head. I'm like, this is wow. Like, when you're able to connect the body to the mind and things like that, I literally live for that shit. That I feel like that is my purpose in life, when, even if that doesn't make any sense, but things like that just is everything to me. But anyway, I have a real interest in holistic health, naturopathy, homeopathy. I'm still studying, really. I'm studying to become a nutritional therapist. I'm not going through the course as fast as I'd like, I'll be completely honest, having moved in and doing things. But I think there is so much we can do, small things that we can do when it comes to our minds and our mental health. And actually, it would be so good for me to get back into doing that right now. But I need to be strict with myself and actually sit down and do that, because I think it's really important, and I feel like it can help us depict and understand things a little bit more when we're maybe not looking after ourselves as best as we could be. So yeah, there's a lot that goes on in our bodies that reflects in our thoughts and brains and stagnation and how we move forwards. But anyway, I really, really hope that you enjoyed this episode. I really hope that it resonated with you a little bit and you were able to understand. I do actually have notes and bullet points to try and help me move through this episode. I'm not actually sure how it's come out, but I'm proud of myself for having got through it and have tried to be vulnerable and authentic with you. I hope it came across that way at least and didn't feel like a therapy session. But I do really hope that this helped, and I hope this gave you a bit of permission to be a bit kinder to yourself if you're going through something at the moment, whether it be grief or not, whether you're just going through a really shit time. This is your sign to be kinder to yourself and to give yourself that validation in your emotions, because you are human and you are incredible. Don't ever forget how incredible you are and how loved you are. And I love you. I love you so much, and I really hope that this did help and you also enjoyed it and it didn't just sound like word vomit. And on that note, I will leave you to it. Please show your love and support for this podcast. I'm trying my best to squeeze it into my life. I'm really enjoying it so far, and I hope you are too, but I'm not going to go on a tangent about that right now. That could be on the next episode or on social media. But please react to this. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you're currently listening to this on Spotify, if you want to see me talk, you can see me on YouTube, Chitchat with Kitcat. And I will see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening, and I'll chat to you all very soon. Bye.